What is going on, everyone? A bittersweet video here, as this is going to be the final video for the 2023 NFL draft season. NFC South fans, thank you for your patience getting to the last draft grades video here, but I'm definitely going to take some time off after this, give you guys some time as well to catch up on these 8 draft grades videos. But man, we're gonna be back in a few weeks with the deep dive series, probably at the end of May. I think I'm gonna sneak in revisiting my 2021 draft grades videos in there as just kind of a casual fun video here, but definitely content is going to slow down here for a couple weeks. I'm going to take some time for myself, going to play the new Jedi Fallen Order game, and yeah, definitely need some sleep these next couple of weeks, but I do want to thank you guys for what has been such a great draft season. You're the best fans in the world. Appreciate you having you. And let's get into the NFC South. And let's start with the Atlanta Falcons, that I am just so excited to talk about this draft. It's not like the most amazing draft in the world, but I love how Arthur Smith is not hiding who he is. And I had in my latest predictive mock draft, Bijan Robinson going to the Falcons. And I've been saying really throughout this entire draft season, like, guys, this running back is special. He's going to go earlier than you're seeing in these mock drafts. I had seen him falling into the second round in mock drafts, and I'm like, look, I get the whole running back position value thing. I was not kind to the Lions about the Jahmyr Gibbs pick, but this is a different level of running back. I don't go around throwing Hall of Fame comps on players, but I compared him to LaDainian Tomlinson. He is the highest graded player I've ever had since I've been doing this. And to me, this is an A graded pick. The reason this isn't a S, a certified steal, is because of that positional value, right? He is my highest graded player in this draft. They get him at 8 because of the positional value. But you look at the fit, you look at the players that had come off the board, right? Will Anderson and Tyree Wilson were gone. I think if they were going to go in a different direction, it was going to be a pass rusher. I understand not wanting to keep Jalen Carter around the area where he already has all of these drag racing connections, where he's just going to be lured back into that situation. I think them and the Raiders, it was like, we can't really take this guy. Like, it doesn't fit with the situation and the literal geography of where he's going to end up. So you look at that. I think the Jeff Okudah trade was excellent value. A 5th round pick for that, I think, opened the door to, not have to take a cornerback here. And if you're not going in either of those two directions, this was the best pick for them. So seriously, you are putting Bijan Robinson now, who to me, like I said, the highest graded player I've ever had. I feel extremely confident saying, barring injury or some horrible landing spot, which were what set Saquon Barkley back early in his career, who is the other best prospect I've ever evaluated, I genuinely think Bijan Robinson is a Hall of Fame player here for the Atlanta Falcons. And to draft that at 8, like, yeah, totally fine with that, especially in a weaker draft class, right? So he's going to come in with Arthur Smith, who already told us last year he wants to run the ball about as much as anybody. And now with Greg Roman gone from the NFL, it's going to be the Atlanta Falcons that want to be in 12 personnel the most. They want to run the ball the most. And the threat of this run game, paired now with Matthew Bergeron, who we'll talk about, this was already a great run game last year, and that's the argument for why you don't draft Bijan here, because Tyler Algier was a 1,000-yard rusher. Cordero Patterson has had success here. Look, this is going to be an even more efficient run game, a dynamic run game with now Desmond Ridder and his threat with his legs, a complete offensive line that was already underrated, now adding Matthew Bergeron in as a guard. I do not say this lightly, but I think Bijan Robinson is going to lead the league in rushing as a rookie. If not lead the league, I would be stunned if he isn't top 3. Again, injury prohibiting, if that's the right word to use there, but you get the point. This is going to be electric. And with the wide zone offenses and the way that Arthur Smith understands the run game, mixing in counters, pin and pull when he can, the read option now, I really think this was the right pick for the Atlanta Falcons. I understand the criticism of taking a running back this early, but we already described earlier why I think the value and the decision is perfectly fine. This gets an A for me. And then with Matthew Bergeron, I've already talked about how much I like this. I think second round is right where I thought he should have gone as a tackle, but just like I said with Tyler Steen for the Eagles, if I could retroactively like kind of regrade him out as a guard, which is what the Falcons are going to play him as, he very well may have been my number one guard in this class. I figured it was more likely he was going to go to a team that would try him at tackle and fail him at tackle. And I think there was some boomer bust aspects to his profile because his footwork is just so poor. He's really bad at, anchoring against power and cutting off inside moves. I think in this system with the wide zone as a guard, he very well might end up the best guard in this draft. In fact, I believe he was the first interior player taken in this draft, unless Skoronski ends up at guard. But I can totally get behind that, man, especially for a wide zone blocking scheme where you want these athletes that can get on the move, reach block, climb to the second level, find a safety, find a weak side linebacker that isn't going to be able to get their hands on Bijan Robinson. And then instead of getting to the second level where Bijan's got to make that first man miss being a linebacker, now it's all he's got to do is make the safety miss, and it's a freaking 50-yard touchdown. So this, to me, with these two picks together, really in tandem, I love this, man. This could very well be the best run game in the entire NFL. They addressed all of their needs in free agency other than slot corner, which they freaking stole Clark Phillips in the 4th round that we haven't talked about yet. Dude, the Falcons are going to be right in the mix for me with that NFC South. I love what they did at the top of this draft. You get to the 3rd round with Zach Harrison, slightly early. I don't think he's going to be an impactful starter for them, but I think he's going to be a rotational player as a big-bodied run defender on early downs. He's just so wildly inconsistent as a pass rusher. This was a highly recruited player going to Ohio State. As a junior last year, was kind of supposed to have a breakout year and maybe get into like first round conversations, and it just never really happened for him. So the tools are there. He has absurd length. He tested well. It's not to say there isn't starter upside in his game. It's just he's played so much, and he already got some of the best pass rush coaching that he's ever going to get at Ohio State. Is that going to change at the next level? I think it's pretty unlikely. If it does, that's amazing. But, in the middle of the 3rd round, I think you're getting a 3rd edge, which is fine value. And I do like him getting Calais Campbell as a mentor because he's kind of that bigger-bodied 5-tech type. So, I like the fit. You've got this Saints defensive staff coming in. They always like these bigger-bodied guys. He's not quite Cam Jordan for them, but similar idea, right? So I'm going to give this one a B. I think it was a fine pick. And then you get to the 3rd day of the draft, and they come out in the 4th round and take Clark Phillips. Like, unbelievable value here. I would have been fine with Clark Phillips at the end of the 2nd round. Atlanta really needed that slot corner. Now you have Okudah. I mean, this secondary is awesome now, really. I mean, Clark Phillips is a plug-and-play starter into the slot. Not the most physically talented player, but he's super smart. He's quick. And I just feel very confident that he's going to be a sound slot corner for them. You got A.J. Terrell. I think Okudah as a number 2 corner on the outside, unlike having to be a number 1 like he was in Detroit, is going to be really good for him, especially in this press man system. You bring in Jesse Bates, and this is going to be a great opportunity now for Richie Grant to take a step up in year 3 as their strong safety. Love this secondary. I like a lot of the stuff they did on the D-line in free agency. The young linebacker group with a lot of potential. I think this defense could be, go from what was a bad defense last year to at least being a above average defense this year. And I can't speak highly enough about that staff coming in from New Orleans and how good of a hire that was. It's my favorite scheme in the league. So, I'm very optimistic about what this draft is going to do for the Falcons. You got to go to the 7th round for a couple more picks here. DeMarco Hellams, I talked about him, my first exposure to him, as I think it was for a lot of people, was that Tennessee game where that was probably the worst game any defensive player had in this entire draft all season. Like, he was probably the reason Alabama lost that game and the reason Alabama didn't get a chance to compete for a national championship at the end of the season. So Bama fans, I think, have it out for him, and rightfully so. But you watch his other games, much better. He is a playmaker. The reason he got exposed so much in Tennessee was because he's so aggressive as far as his coverage decision making, if you will. No patience at all. He sees a route break, he's gonna go. So Tennessee saw that on the scouting report. We're like, all right, double moves, 2-way goes. We're gonna roast this guy all day, and they did. But here in Atlanta, I think as a special teamer in the 7th round, he loves to run and hit. He's got good speed, right? He's got good size. He's 4.5 speed. I think he's at like 208, 205, 208 pounds. Definitely going to be a good special teamer. And I also like him as a situational dime back, which he can be here, right? They have their 2 safeties, but you bring him in as a kind of like bandit safety, put him on, buzz assignments, come down into that 10 to 15 yard area, read the quarterback's eyes, play aggressive. I think he can be a playmaker for them. Maybe someone that even gets 2 or 3 interceptions a year. Reminds me a little bit of like Mike Edwards for Tampa Bay, who's kind of been that boomer bust guy. Or maybe an even better comparison would be what PJ Williams was for this New Orleans staff coming into Atlanta as that aggressive dime back. So don't be surprised if he's kind of this playmaker that comes in and gets a few snaps every week and makes some highlights happen. Javon Gwynn, fine, backup type, played a lot of snaps at South Carolina, decent athlete, fits their wide zone blocking scheme. I don't see him ever ascending to being a starter, but it's fine in the 7th round. So I love this Falcons draft. I'm going to give it an A. They filled to me needs. Like, I like Tyler Algier. I'm not going to say it was a need, but long term, did we really view Tyler Algier as this game-changing back? Like, no, probably not. Like, Arthur Smith gets his Derrick Henry, a Nick Chubb, a Jonathan Taylor, like that truly explosive, sensational running back that takes that run game to the next level. Love addressing the guard spot. You get another defensive lineman, and you fill in that last hole on the defense, all with good value. Love this draft for the Falcons. Before we go to Carolina here, I got to tell you guys about my friends at Underdog Fantasy. Underdog is the place for fantasy football. Right now, Best Ball Fantasy Football is live, including their Best Ball Mania competition. $15 million in prize pool, $3 million to first place. If you don't want to wait till August and you want to get in and start drafting, if you're a fantasy football addict like me, you want to try and get your hands on Bijan Robinson now, you can do that at Underdog Fantasy. Best Ball is set it, forget it. You can draft now and enjoy, when these games go live, a chance to win some money. I also love their Pick'em contest. I can't speak highly enough about how much this has increased my interest in sports. Whether I'm watching the NFL on Sundays or like going to a baseball game, I've been doing this all the time. You can set your lineup 3, 4, 5 picks, a chance to win up to 20-1 odds. Just, picking strikeouts, home runs, fantasy points, you name it. I love their Pick'em contest. I know you guys will too. If you're a sports fan, Underdog is the place to be, man. And right now, if you sign up using promo code TFG, they will match up to $100 on your first deposit, and you'll support my channel in a meaningful way in the process. So that is promo code TFG at Underdog Fantasy. All right, the Carolina Panthers, not a ton to talk about, right? It's Bryce Young at the top. This has been analyzed to death, and I love this, right? Even if you had to give up DJ Moore, and I think we do have to factor in the trade up in this decision. Some people might look at it as a negative. Oh, you had to give up all that. No, dude, you went for it. You went and got the best quarterback in this draft, tier 1 to me. Like, the Texans had to give up basically the same thing for CJ Stroud, who's not at the same level prospect Bryce Young is. Potentially even more, right? If that's a top 3 pick next year that the Texans gave up, that could be Marvin Harrison or, God forbid, Caleb Williams. Like, dude, you jumped ahead of the game. You got it done. You moved up and made it happen. And you get Bryce Young, who to me is a franchise-altering quarterback. I love the foresight to do that. I love that they didn't go with CJ Stroud. I know I'm just coming off as this complete CJ Stroud hater, but that's because the narrative is that these guys are like close as quarterback prospects. I couldn't disagree more. I think Bryce Young is such a sensational player in both regards of the game, whether it's the playing from the pocket, processing coverages, making the right reads, avoiding mistakes, especially when it gets down in the red zone, man. He is a complete surgeon. But you pair that with the rare eye in the back of his head trait, that ability to navigate and sense pressure, find open space in clean pockets, but also know when and how to get out of dirty ones, and the playmaking instincts on the move, the arm talent totally there. I am just so happy for Panthers fans that you are the team that moved up for Bryce Young, because a lot of teams missed out on this player. So to me, this draft is not perfect. There's certainly some spots to critique, and we're going to do that. But with that said, Jonathan Mingo in the second round, I don't hate it. This one gets a B from me. I did have a third round grade on Jonathan Mingo, and I was higher on Mingo than a lot of people. I do think, if you're justifying this pick, you're looking at this wide receiver class and saying he was the guy in the second round that could be a number one. And I don't disagree with that sentiment. Michael Wilson doesn't really have the speed that Mingo has. You've got a bunch of these kind of gadget players, speedsters, undersized slot guys. Your Jalen Hyatts, Marvin Mims, Jaden Reed, Josh Downs, could have thought about a Cedric Tillman for sure. But if you wanted to gamble that you're getting a receiver that now is going to get much better quarterback play, that you are going to give him an opportunity to not have to compete right away, but swinging for that upside, I really can't argue with it too much. But again, I do think this was a little bit early. I think it's very risky. He's just shows a lot of flashes, but does oftentimes leave a lot to be desired as far as his hands consistency and production. So I could totally see this playing out. I could see him struggling to make it work as well. So we're just going to have to wait and see on that one. I understand the risk, though. And then DJ Johnson in the third round. Again, I was much higher on DJ Johnson. I like his game. I think he showed incredible flashes of power, especially going against BYU. He made Blake Freeland look like a problem out there, and he defends the run well. He's big. He ran a 4.49 at his size. So there is a lot to work with here. But he's 24 years old, or going to turn 24 this year, in 6 years in college. Never really tapped into that athletic ability, and I think you got to factor that in. Again, I was higher on DJ Johnson, and I still think this was a pretty major reach. Definitely has the upside to make it worth this pick, but I think you could have gone in multiple different directions than this. But I think they made up for it a little bit by taking Chandler Zavala in the middle of the fourth round. Maybe the most fun thing about this is he was Ike Makwanu's running mate at North Carolina State. You put them back together, the in-town. I know it's not in town, it's Raleigh versus Charlotte, but might as well be in-town heroes there on the offensive line, really completing that offensive line, between Zavala and Christensen, right? Brady Christensen. I think you're going to secure that left guard spot. You're giving Bryce Young, honestly, a really underrated offensive line. And I think if you wanted to use this fourth pick to help Bryce Young, this is probably the way to go. You could have maybe thought about a Josh Downs for sure, also a Carolina guy, but I love this pick. I think he's going to compete for starting work right away. Got to stay healthy. There's some back injury stuff there for him, but I still think very good value there. And then they take Jamie Robinson in the fifth round. I'm fine with him here. A lot of people were surprised Jamie Robinson didn't crack my top 17 safety list. This was a player I was lower on. A lot of people in my YouTube chat were like, how is Jamie Robinson falling through the third round, through the fourth round? I'm like, I don't know, man. It's because I don't think he's a starting player. I don't think he has starting traits. Had a good highlight reel at Florida State, but you watch the coverage consistency down to down. You look at the size profile. He's undersized. He's not a guy that's going to thrive down in the box. He's not the fastest player to play over the top. So I do think he can be a good dime back. But I don't think this was some great steal or anything. I think he's going to be a role player and a special teamer for them. Chris Smith was there. I could critique this and call this a reach, but it was the last pick they had in this draft. If they felt like they needed a really good special teamer and that dime back, I could see how he fits there. So I definitely think there were better picks to be made at this position group. That's why this isn't getting a good pick grade or a great pick grade. Chris Smith would have gotten me a lot more excited here as a potential starter for them, but I'm not going to slam him for it. Overall, I'm going to give this a B+. You're grading the draft as a whole and all of the decisions they made. Looking back on this, getting Bryce Young is going to be the win. And man, if Jonathan Mingo reaches his upside, if DJ Johnson reaches his upside, they may have stolen a really good draft here. But outside of the Zavala pick, I don't think they got incredible value anywhere. And even then, it's that's a great pick because of the fit, getting to play next to Icky again. But I'm going to give this one a B+. So excited to watch Bryce Young for this team. And I think they're going to compete in the NFC South right away. New Orleans Saints up next. And I love the Brian Brzee pick. off the top, but really did not like what they did on day 2. But let's start with Brzee. I had a true first round grade on Bryan Brzee. I have a really good gut feeling about this guy. The way his game came together at the end of the season, he was awesome in that Tennessee game. The high end play for him is there. You don't even have to squint that hard to find it. It's just the injuries, the playing time, that the consistency wasn't always there. But this was the number 1 player in his recruiting class. He's dealt with injuries, dealt with the death of his, younger sister, 16 years old, tragically lost to brain cancer before the year started. I just, how can your mind even be in the right place? I can't even imagine. Just crazy, man. But I think he can really return value here at 29. I like his floor, honestly. I think he defends the run pretty well. I don't like how he holds up against double teams, but in New Orleans, they've had a lot of success with a guy like David Onyemata, who they lost. I think he's a great replacement for David Onyemata. I think his upside's even higher. They're going to be able to play him at 3-tech. I think he could be a good 3-down player for them right away, and his upside's going to be awesome. It's a little bit of a risky pick given the production isn't all there, but I really this was one of my favorite fits for him is the New Orleans Saints. So that one's going to get an A for me. But after that, man, I hated what they did on day 2. This was right there with what the Jaguars did as just questionable picks, man. Isaiah Foskey with the 9th pick in the 2nd round. I get that edge players were flying off the board, but just freaking wait, man. Isaiah Foskey is not a game-changing edge player. He is a 3rd guy, and he's a solid player. And again, I could be wrong about any of these evaluations, but I have been critical of Saints draft picks in the past. I thought they overdrafted Peyton Turner, and so far that's turned to be true, and I feel the same way about Isaiah Foskey out of Notre Dame. I thought he was a 3rd-round guy, right in line almost with kind of what we said about Zach Harrison. He's a toolsy player, but he's not an instinctive pass rusher, and the consistency was never there. I don't think it's going to come. Drafting him with the 9th pick in the 2nd round, you're hoping this guy can become a quality starter for you. I just don't see that path for Isaiah Foskey. He's got decent power. He defends the run well. And he's going to be a good 3rd edge player for them. But I think they passed on better players at the position. But most importantly, I think it's just a big reach with a really important pick there. I get it. They wanted a bigger bodied guy that fits their system. Take Tuli Tuipulotu. I don't know, man. I hope I'm wrong here, but I don't see it with him returning this type of value. He's going to be a fine player for them, but yeah, again, just a big reach for me. But I thought the Kendre Miller pick was even worse, man. I don't see it as, again, a high pick in the 3rd round. I'm going to give this one an F, dude. I think this is a complete reach. He was my RB 15. I think there were way better players available for them. Tyjae Spears sitting in your backyard out of Tulane. Devon Achane, Israel Abanikanda, Chase Brown, Roshan Johnson, Tank Bigsby, Sean Tucker. There's a couple undrafted free agents that I thought were better running backs than Kendre Miller. Not that Kendre Miller's terrible, but he is a complete jag, just a guy. Very reminiscent to me of some running back reaches that I've critiqued in the past. Guys like Josh Kelly for the Chargers, or the 3rd round running back the Niners took last year, Tyron Davis Price. Man, I think he's a smooth runner. He's got decent athleticism, decent instincts, but he's just not the fastest guy, and he's not the biggest guy. Decent running back, but man, I thought 5th, 6th round on him would have been a totally fine pick. Early 3rd round, passing on impactful players, passing on better running backs, in my opinion. I think they're going to really regret this pick. Again, I could very much be wrong. He could be a freaking superstar, but I would be remarkably surprised if that happened. Now, they did have a good day 3. They trade up for Nick Saldiveri. I like Nick Saldiveri, and I know Brandon Thornton loves him, and I trust his opinion more than anybody on offensive line. So, if they're moving up, if the Saints are moving up, I could have just been a touch lower on him. I had a 4th to a 5th round grade on him. So, I like him in this spot. I'm just saying I don't know if he was someone I would have traded up for necessarily, but overall, I think there's something there. Clearly, this guy was a very likable interview guy, and they came up. They get their guy with the 1st pick in the 4th round. It's aggressive, but I could see him aging out Andrews Pete. They also did not pick up Cesar Ruiz's 5th-year option, so they're looking down the road a little bit, looking for a potential starter there. I definitely think he's got starting upside, so we'll see if it works out. Definitely a risk, but I think it could pay off for them. Then Jake Haener at the end of the 4th round. I got to Jake Haener very late in the process. I like him, man. Felt like I was watching Bailey Zappi all over again. Obviously, Zappi came in and had a good couple of starts for the Patriots. And as a backup to Derek Carr, you got Fresno State quarterback room there. A ton of fun. I think, I really don't see a ton of upside in his game. You never know. Sometimes these guys with weaker arms are just such good decision makers that they shock the world. I'm not going to say it's impossible for Jake Haener, but if nothing else, I see a very good career backup, really excellent decision maker, maybe the best quarterback in this draft as far as processing defenses, making the right decisions. He's a surgeon in the short to intermediate part of the field. So, the Saints think they can compete every year, whether they're right or wrong. And if something happens to Derek Carr, I think Jake Haener is going to be ready to go right away. They traded up for him as well. They give up a 4th-round pick next year, I believe, to make that pick. So, again, a little bit risky to give up draft capital next year, but this is kind of what they do, and I think it's a good pick. Jordan Howden in the 5th round, really good athlete. Never was a huge playmaker for the Gophers, but also wasn't getting beat in coverage a whole lot. He's just a very sound cover player, a great tackler. He's got really good athleticism. I think what he needs is to be coached up to play a little bit more aggressive. He needs to find that right balance. He definitely is on the far conservative side of the spectrum as far as safety play goes. Unlike, we talked about DeMarco Helms is like a complete opposite player, kind of in similar bodies too. It's kind of funny to look at the parallels there. But I think if he could be coached some aggression, I think he has starter traits. I know he has starter traits, but if nothing else, he's got great speed and he's a really good tackler. So he's going to be a really good special teamer for you while he develops. And then A.T. Perry in the 6th round, great value, man. This is a certified steal. I had a 3rd-round grade on A.T. Perry. A little bit of a unique player. I get why some teams may have been turned off by him, but the second he starts to slip into the 4th, 5th round, it's like someone should have taken a gamble on a 6'3" player with 4.45 speed, good production at Wake Forest, good ball skills, great route runner at his size. Man, to come in and kind of sit behind Michael Thomas and maybe be like a long-term starter for them, like I don't want to call him a Michael Thomas replacement because their play styles are so unbelievably different. But, as a perimeter starter down the road for them, maybe even in year 1, he could be a guy that gets a part of that rotation. So, A.T. Perry is really a steal at the end of the 6th round. And I don't trade drafts this way, but if you flip him for Kendre Miller, this draft looks a hell of a lot better, right? So, a bit of an up and down draft there. But I'm going to give this one a C+. I can't endorse their day 2 strategy. I think they made up for it a little bit on day 3. And I think Brian Brzee is going to be a really good football player for them. So not the worst draft in the world, but I do think they pissed a little bit of value down the drain there, especially in the 3rd round and at the top of the 2nd. And I think it's fair to be critical of that. And we'll see in a couple years if I'm right about Foskey and Miller. All right, wrapping things up with the Tampa Bay Bucs. A very solid draft with one pick that I wasn't a huge fan of, with the Cody Mock pick in the 2nd round. But Kalijah Kancey with the 19th pick, yeah, I like it. It's not my favorite pick in the 1st round. I think there's a boomer bust aspect to his game because of the arm length and the size. But you want to pick a scheme where he can work next to Vita Vea, who's going to eat up double teams. You can play Kancey as that 4-eye, that penetrator that they thought they were getting in... was it Logan Hall last year? Was he a 1st-round pick last year for Tampa? They are just done with him, huh? He was like the 34th pick in the 2nd round last year. They traded down and picked Logan Hall. That's right. I didn't hate Logan Hall, but I thought that was a complete reach. Perhaps an example of, draft grades not being completely useless, but anyway, this is another chance at that penetrating 3-tech, that 4-eye, which is a huge system need for Todd Bowles' defense. So I think he's got a really good chance to succeed there. And the nice thing about Kalijah Kancey is you're going to know right away, especially in an opportunity like this. You're going to know right away if his length, which is in the 1 percentile, there hasn't been a defensive tackle with this arm length drafted in, I think it is 25 years or something. You're going to know immediately if he's too small to play in the NFL because there's nothing technically speaking or physically speaking that he doesn't have about him. It's just, is his size a non-starter for the NFL level. I don't think that's going to be the case. He was so dominant at Pittsburgh. I can totally get behind this pick. Now, Cody Mauch in the middle of the second round, not the worst pick in the world. I was not a fan of Cody Mauch's tape, and that was a huge surprise to me, right? Because you look at the aesthetic, and everybody just instantly loves this guy before they even see him play. And I honestly, it's hard to say that happens to an NFL team, but it's certainly possible because it happens to literally every fan and draft analyst that started to watch him play. Long red hair, this North Dakota State farm boy who's missing his 2 front teeth. Like, he looks like an NFL offensive lineman. But man, I was underwhelmed. I was underwhelmed by him at the Senior Bowl, where he was one of the worst offensive linemen there in pass protection. And then I watched his tape at North Dakota State. And even at that level of competition, I saw a lot of concerns in pass protection, like play strength concerns when he faced bigger players at that level of competition. I get the athleticism, and I know they're trying to go to a little bit more wide zone stuff here, but I do think this was a reach. And I really think if his aesthetic was different, I don't know if he goes in the second round. I could be completely wrong. Like, he has upside for sure. I think he's got to beef up and he's got to learn a new position. But for me, you took him over John Michael Schmitz. I can't get behind that. Jensen's getting up there in age, coming off an injury, and I think John Michael Schmitz can play guard in the meantime, just like what the Philadelphia Eagles did with, Landon Dickerson. There it is. I think that would have been a much better pick for the Bucs here. So I think they reached, and I think they passed on a better player at the position. And, I get they don't want to take Osiris Torrance because I know they're going to more wide zone stuff. But, I think John Michael Schmitz showed you that he is a phenomenal wide zone blocker at Minnesota. And I think they're going to regret passing on him. We'll see where he ends up playing. If it's at tackle, I'm really concerned. I think at guard, he has a much better chance of success. But I think it's going to be a learning curve. Honestly, I liked Luke Godke a little bit better than Cody Mauch last year. And we saw him have some struggles right away, too, just because of the play strength stuff and some of the level of competition transition. So could work out, but I'm a little bit critical of that pick. And then Yaya Diaby is basically identical to the Rams taking Byron Young. And we gave that an A because the risk is basically worth the reward around this point. 3rd to a 4th round grade on both those guys, both insane athletes. In Yaya Diaby's case, he played basically like 3 tech. Like, he was used a lot of times as a straight up defensive tackle for Louisville. This is a 250-pound edge rusher. So it's just kind of like a fog of war on his evaluation, basically. This guy could be an insane athlete. This guy could be, a Will McDonald type of pick for you. Or he just might have no idea what he's doing trying to rush off the edge. They also ran a million games and stunts at Louisville. It was just an impossible evaluation. You look at the speed, and the production was there because it was all schemed up, but trying to evaluate what his pass rushing tool belt looks like and how instinctive he is as a pass rusher is a complete crapshoot. So the athletic tools are insane. My pro comp for him is Samson Ebukam. So, we'll see what they can get out of him. High risk, high reward pick that I think is very well worth it at this point in the draft. And they needed this guy to kind of, Shaq Barrett is getting up there in age, coming off the injury. I think Joe Troyenka has not quite given them what they were hoping for quite yet. So I do think it was a position of need. Was about the best player available at this point in time. So I can get behind this pick. We'll see if it works out for him, though. There is an element of risk involved for sure. They take Servacia Dennis in the middle of the 5th round. Love it. Absolutely love it. This was one of my favorite day 3 picks just from a fit perspective. Dennis was one of my guys, one of my biggest my guys in this draft. You get through all these day 3 linebackers, and they're pretty much all terrible. Servacia Dennis, not the case. Really smart player, incredibly instinctive guy, a good athlete. Maybe the biggest thing for Tampa Bay here, one of the best blitzing linebackers in this draft. For him to be there in the middle of the 5th round, I think is great value. I think he is going to be starting in place of Devin White next year, and I think he's going to be a good starter for them. My upside grade for him was Dre Greenlaw comp, so I could totally see him reaching that here in Tampa. Honestly, I have a better feeling about him than I do about Cody Mauch and Yaya Diaby. And then Payne Durham, basically in the 6th round there, very end of the 5th round with a comp pick. I thought about calling this a reach, but the value where they got him was just fine. But I do think 3 picks later with Davis Allen coming off the board, I do think it's worth saying for me that I think Davis Allen was just a better player that they could have had as that tight end 2 type. Allen, not quite as big as Durham, but a much better run blocker on tape and a much better hands guy, but kind of similar prospects, not the fastest guys, probably never going to be starters. Payne Durham, fine pick. I think he could be a tight end 2 for them. Josh Hayes, an athletic D-back out of Kansas State that I didn't get to. So, developmental, special teamer, solid pick. We'll see what he can do. I love the Trey Palmer pick in the 6th round. I had him as a 4th to a 5th round guy, former 4 or 5-star recruit, went to LSU. It didn't work out. He goes to Nebraska, which is just a completely anemic offensive program. So opportunities for him as a deep threat were certainly limited, but he's probably the fastest receiver in this draft. Ran better than Jalen Hyatt, had a very good Senior Bowl week, showed some good routes. The thing with him is his drop issues are F. He had, I think it was a 17, I have it in my notes here. I think it was 17%. Okay, not quite that bad. 13.8% career drop rate, which is a big problem. We've seen these deep threats have big drop issues, hold them back from becoming starting players at the next level. It's something you can work on. This is very similar to Marquez Valdez-Scantling going in the 6th round for Green Bay. Drop issues, can get open on deep routes. Has to improve that if he's going to be a starter. So could take some time to get there for him, but I like the upside in the 6th round for sure. Jose Ramirez out of Eastern Michigan, good pick for them. He kind of looks like Shaq Barrett playing at Eastern Michigan. A little bit undersized, not the fastest guy, but a really polished pass rusher. Can really beat you in any variety of ways. Gives it his all against the run. I think they watched his tape and they're like, well, we can't take this guy too early because lower level of competition, not the best tester, undersized guy. But I think they watched his tape and they were like, God damn, that's just Shaq Barrett. So I hope it works out for him. Shaq Barrett, remember, I think was an undrafted or 7th round pick for the Denver Broncos. So it's not the most insane thing in the world to say Jose Ramirez could become Shaq Barrett. It's just pretty unlikely, right? But I think that's really a good spot for him in the 6th round as a kind of absolute best case scenario comp. But yeah, I like this draft for Tampa. I don't think any of these picks were complete slam dunks. Honestly, Servasia Dennis might be that slam dunk pick for them, just as a fit. But I think they got some good players. They definitely took some risks. I think both honestly, their first 3 picks were all risky picks. Kalijah Kancey with the size, Cody Mock, I do think is a risky prospect, and Yaya Diaby certainly risky with his production profile. But overall, I like their draft. It gets a B+ from me. So there we go. Draft season done. Fine complete. Please do drop a like down below. I really appreciate it. Do make sure you're subscribed. We've got lots of great summer content coming. If you have not followed for my deep dive series, I'm telling you, we're going to, it's 40+ hours diving into each individual team. It's when you're at the airport and they have those football almanacs that you can buy that are 300 pages, diving into every college football team or NFL team. This series is that in video format. So if you're not subscribed, do make sure you are down below. And yeah, that's all we got. We'll see you guys probably 10, 14 days for our next video, where we're gonna I'm pretty sure our next video is going to be revisiting my 2021 NFL draft grades, which is going to be a ton of fun. But peace out, everybody. We'll see you later.